Extra 1063 and a second chance bail bonds are here to back your blue. Back Your Blue highlights special initiatives, criminal justice programs, and community events aimed at keeping our communities safer. Join a second chance bail bond CEO Daniel Matalon and host Tug Coward to learn some good news about and from the law enforcement and justice communities. Now it's time to back your blue on Extra 1063 FM and the Extra 1063 app.
Welcome back to another episode of Back Your Blue. My name is Tug Cowart. You're on Extra 1063, along with Daniel Matalon. He is the CEO of A Second Chance Bail Bonds. Man, what's going on? How are you?
Good, doing well.
It's so good to have Thomas Flugum in with us. He's a defense attorney, born and raised in Metro Atlanta, grew up in Marietta, graduating high school and college in Kennesaw, went to Kennesaw Mountain High School, class of 06. Let's go. Your mama, a North Cobb High School graduate, so your roots run deep in the area. Grandparents building a house located just behind Kennesaw State Band. It does not get more grassroots than that, buddy. I mean, when you can give your whole lineage and it's in a square mile,
right?
That's pretty darn impressive.
Right.
Because, look, we're in a pretty transient city. Let's be honest.
Absolutely.
I'm born and raised in Northwest Georgia. I know I sound like an old hillbilly down here in the big city. There's not a lot of that. There is second, third generation people that have moved here and then set roots, but I mean like people born and raised here and call this home because it means more than just a word.
And my uncle was kind of a wild man. He talks about back in the day, Barrett Parkway was a 2-lane road.
Right.
And in those days, you wreck your car and the cops would follow you home.
Right.
You know, so as long as you had one eye open and could get there safely, they were going to follow you and give you a slap on the wrist. Things have obviously changed with Uber and the ride share. So, you know, things are different, but you get a local flavor being from here. You know, there are things that we understand about the community, about the dynamics, about the different locations. All of my employees actually are from the Atlanta area, from Lawrenceville, Decatur. One went to Harrison High School. I went to Kennesaw Mountain. So,
how did you end up not sounding like I do? I mean, how is that something you practiced? Because I must have failed.
You know, my grandfather's more Cajun than anything, so it's a true mix.
But I don't hear Cajun either.
You know, I got a little bit picked on. I had to develop that non-dictional accent for the media.
Look, I get it. You know what? It's funny you bring that up because I've been told I've been in radio since I got out of the Navy, so right around 2000 whatever. And I've been told so many times, you got to lose that accent. You cannot be on the radio. We will not. There's just no way. You're not going to be able to do it. I was like, I work at a dang country station. What do you mean? And there were people at country stations, of course, big conglomerates, big corporate. They're like, you sound too country. I was like, too country for a country station?
They didn't understand the flavor.
I didn't. But that's going back to your point. You understand the flavor. You understand the area and the people that have grown up here and the people that have moved here. You understand that dynamic, and that's, I would imagine, if you're looking for legal representation, understanding that dynamic, whichever side of the coin you land on is important.
That's right, and we're kind of like a small state inside of a larger state. You know, the metro Atlanta area is different than the outlying areas of the state. And so it is kind of a benefit because I went to school inside the city, but again, you know, we grew up out in Rome and, you know,
I'm from Dalton.
All that kind of area too. So I can turn it on when I need to.
Yeah, right. Depending on the courtroom.
Right.
I get it. Absolutely. Jennifer Nettles that sings for Sugarland, she always said the same thing. She was like, depending on who I'm talking to is how much I turn it on.
Right.
You know, and people really, when that story came out, it's been 10 or 12 years ago now, they were picking at her a little bit. Like, what do you mean? Is that not authentic? And she's like, no, that's the point. It was completely authentic. It just depends on who you're talking to. Like, my wife can tell me, she's like, I know when you're talking to your mama. And I know when you're talking to somebody in a professional setting.
Right.
You just change to fit. And it's not being inauthentic. I just want to be respectful to the situation. I know I can call mama. Now, if I go and just call somebody that I'm talking to in a professional setting, be like, hey, man, how you been? And they'll be like, who is this hillbilly? You know, I got no time for this guy. What are you talking about? After graduating high school, Thomas had a passion for helping those in need and becoming a bigger part of the community. Initially attended the University of Alabama.
Roll Tide, baby.
Oh, it hurts. It still burns. You got to remember, you're in a. Are you a Georgia fan too?
Florida State.
Florida State. Well, so you're suffering the same pain that we are.
Mad.
Yeah.
Goodness gracious. Yeah. So Georgia, I feel like they got a raw end of the deal a little bit. And then Florida State, man, they got robbed without a gun. Dude, I'm telling you, there's never. But look, I have nothing but the utmost respect for Alabama. One of the very few universities that I do have. Like, I'm not an Auburn fan. Ugh.
Yeah.
I'm not a Tennessee fan. Ugh. Florida fan, no thank you. Anybody in orange, I'm out. I have incredible respect for Nick Saban. I have incredible respect for Alabama, the program, and everything they do. So if I'm losing to anybody, I can at least lose with dignity to Alabama because I know what that university represents.
Well, and the campus is unlike any other. You know,
I know a bunch of kids down there.
I was driving through the first time when I was visiting colleges, and it was like, this is what you feel like a college should look like.
Good Southern school. Man, there's a bunch of them, too. Oxford, gorgeous. Auburn, as much as I don't like Auburn, gorgeous campus. University of South Carolina. If you're in, Nashville, Vanderbilt, man, there's just a lot of great colleges and universities throughout the South. But you finished your undergrad studies at Kennesaw State as a communications major, which I can't remember. Yeah, I can't remember if we were talking about it on the air or off the air, but lawyering wasn't your first choice.
It was not, with the communication stuff, you get used to being in front of a camera. I was looking at news broadcasting, and
did some radio as well.
Right. And as you come up to graduating, you're looking for jobs and you start to realize really quick, I'm going to have to relocate. I'm going to have to go to a smaller market before I come back.
Work your way back up.
And ultimately it was important to me to be, again, part of the community that I grew up in. You get a unique knowledge base being from here, and ultimately I want to be there for my kids growing up. So, packing up and moving every 5 years just didn't appeal to me.
There's nothing more important, in my opinion, and Daniel, you can echo this or disagree with it. Being there for your kids, there's nothing more important. If you want to see your kids succeed, be there. Just be there. The 100%. Presence. There's nothing more important. I would imagine, we've not talked about the, you tell me if I'm wrong, the people that you deal with at a second chance bail bonds, I would imagine the majority did not have the most stable home life, and maybe that's too much of a blanket statement. You correct me where I need to be corrected, because I don't know.
Well, I mean, it varies, right? Not one size fits all.
No, of course not.
But yeah, absolutely, yeah. You come across that, especially in the juvenile cases and things like that, you definitely can it definitely correlates for sure.
I can see that.
Well, and I think that the benefit for what Daniel and I both do is we see the families. We see the families of the people who've been affected or been arrested or have made these decisions, and they are our points of contact. And so a lot of the time we are their hero. We're the ones getting their loved one out of jail. And my associate, Robert, shout out, he would tell you, he was a sex offense prosecutor. When I hired him out of Fulton County, he was only doing rapes and child molestations.
Oh, my God.
He said, I got more thank yous in my third week working for you than I ever did in that job, because the people who you're working for are extremely affected by this, and they just want justice to be done. On the other hand, I get a group of high fives and hugs when their loved one gets out of jail against all odds. And so that kind of, fills my plate.
I can only imagine. You attended and graduated from Georgia State University of Law, and you were on the trial team both years of trial team eligibility. I can imagine that makes a lot of sense, the trial team for a lawyer.
That's what we got into.
Dude, is there any school that you didn't hit? I swear you got a Rolodex of mascots that you cheer for.
I've been around, but also local.
Again, back to local. Right?
Yeah, it keeps bringing me back. So
yeah, but you know what? I don't know that I know Tuscaloosa obviously not local. Look how many kids from here go there.
Yeah,
I mean, there's a hint of local. There's a hint of Metro Atlanta, and even the state of Georgia for that matter, because Georgia's impossible to get into these days. A lot of people go down to Alabama, and like I said, I can count at least 3, maybe even 4 kids that we know that are going to the University of Alabama now. So, but local, back to local, everything comes down to local. And if you want to affect your life truly, and y'all both jump in here, voting is important. Of course, everybody knows, if you want to make change in your community, in your state, in your country, voting matters. You have to go vote. But voting for the president has less effect on your life than voting for your city council, your school board, your county commission, maybe even your sheriff, if that's a position that's voted for. And I don't know.
And it is.
Is it in every municipality?
100%.
Yeah, I thought so, but I don't want to speak out of turn. But that's where real change happens when you're involved at that level. I'm sure both of you all have seen that, right?
Well, and, coming from Fulton County, there are other communities in outlying counties that you will get a significantly different offer or result on a misdemeanor marijuana or a DUI, in a northern county or in a southern county an hour below the city than you will inside the city, because ultimately the people in the city have so many more issues that they're dealing with. Just the numbers alone, you have, I think that the Fulton Solicitor's Office, who's in charge of prosecuting DUIs, is the highest per capita, per case office in the Southeast. They prosecute more DUI cases than any other prosecutor's office in the entire Southeast. And so that creates problems that are unique to the structure and the size of the city that a lot of smaller municipalities don't deal with. So they could sink their teeth into maybe this DUI case or this domestic violence case, wherein, again, if I'm in the city, we got YSL trial going on, Trump being prosecuted. So all of these huge
just
cases,
on the border of in the order of importance, like you're saying. I mean,
those guys are prosecuting criminal trespassers too, or the guy who steals his flashlight from Walmart. They're in the same courthouse. Mm-hmm. And so, again, kind of going back to understanding the demographics and the Alabama thing, like, for better or for worse, the feel and the demographics in Alabama are different than they are in the city proper here.
Oh, my gosh, yeah.
So, I found like I was more at home in the melting pot.
Mm-hmm. You founded the Freedom Lawyers.
Yep.
And I want to dive into that in the next segment. We're coming to the close on this segment, but as we talk to Thomas Flugum, a defense attorney here in town, grew up in Metro Atlanta, Kennesaw kid that is doing well. How do folks get a hold of you if they need your expertise?
FreedomLawyers.com.
That's easy
We'll
enough.
pop right up.
FreedomLawyers.com. You'll find Thomas Flugum, as you find him here today on Back Your Blue. Got my friend Daniel Madelon of A Second Chance Bail Bonds with me. My name is Tug Cowart. This is Extra 106.3. We'll be right back.
This is Back Your Blue, presented by A Second Chance Bail Bonds, live on Extra 106.3 FM and streaming for free anytime on the Extra 106.3 app.
Welcome back to Back Your Blue with Daniel Madelon of A Second Chance Bail Bonds. My name is Tug Cowart on Extra 106.3. Our guest is Thomas Flugum. He is a defense attorney here in Metro Atlanta. Grew up in Marietta, graduated Kennesaw Mountain High School, class of 06. Mama grew up in North Cobb and graduated from North Cobb High School. So obviously the roots are deep. If you're looking for somebody that understands Metro Atlanta, understands it, whether you've born and raised here your whole life or you just came here last week, understands that this area is a melting pot. It is so diverse with so many people from so many different places. And as a guy that went to the University of Alabama for a while, the Alabama Alumni Association here is huge. Ohio State's huge. Michigan's huge. Georgia's huge. Georgia Tech's huge. Auburn's huge. I mean, there are really I bet I'm just going to throw this out there. Nebraska. I bet University of Nebraska has a huge alumni presence in Atlanta. I don't know that, but I just know how many people move here from everywhere else, and it would shock me to no end if that weren't the case, because so many people come here, and that just opens the door for you and your business at the Freedom Lawyers, which you can find at thefreedomlawyers.com, or is it just Freedom Lawyers?
FreedomLawyers.com.
FreedomLawyers.com, no the. So just FreedomLawyers.com. So if you need help for somebody that gets it and that loves some college football too, maybe this is the guy for you. Find yourself in a situation you need expert opinion, expert advice. Make sure you reach out to Thomas and his team at Freedom Lawyers. The Freedom Lawyers is the company. While you were in law school, you worked for a criminal defense attorney, and you did an internship at the Fulton County Solicitor's Office, as well as Honorable Judge, is it Goger? Goger. Judge Goger, Fulton County Superior Court Judge. You volunteered with the Fulton County Public Defender's Office while you're in law school, primarily practicing in front of Judge Newkirk, Fulton County Superior Court Judge. Man, you came out of the gate. Like, I don't know that many people graduate college and law school and, like, I'm diving in. I mean, I'm not feet first. I'm going head first. That's what it sounds like to me. It sounds like in my experience, or at least people that I've talked to that are in the legal profession, like they started out at some big kind of company and they were kind of putting their toe in the water. That doesn't look like or sound like what you did.
Right. When I actually went to law school, I have an uncle who's a criminal defense attorney out in Mississippi. And so, I come from a sports background. My dad was actually a football coach at Kennesaw Mountain. I was a 3-sport letterman, so I always try to have a game plan going in. Same with law school. I kind of came to the end of undergrad. I said, if I'm going to do this, what is the plan? And so I did everything I could to get as much trial experience as I could and really kind of see both sides of the aisle, understand what it's like to try and put somebody in jail for a crime, understand the burden that comes with that, but then also kind of gain the perspective of how best to defend someone, because I know how they're going to attack us, and my background is unique because, my dad was a teacher. Again, my mom was an accountant. And so, I grew up in Kennesaw at the time, unfortunately, when heroin was bad. Oh, I don't know if anybody remembers this, but it used to be if you were up past midnight and there'd be a pill mill on every corner. If you're in pain, give us a call.
Wow.
And
I don't recall that.
Was bad. I was living in a house in college with 3 guys who started shooting up.
Oh, what?
And 2 of them, unfortunately, passed away. One of them is clean. He's doing awesome. He's got a family, but the difference between me potentially going that route and being where I am on 1 or 2 days was one of those friends being like, you're not coming in here with us. You're not doing that. And so I can see that because someone's in this situation or because they've made this decision doesn't make them a bad person. A lot of it's the background, their external factors that everybody doesn't understand as to why you have to make some of these decisions, but I try and really tell their story about who they are, why are they here? Is it what the state says it is, or is there some other possible reasonable explanation or some other story that needs to be told? My job is to make sure that every aspect of every case is investigated and that we make the case impact whoever it is our client is in the minimum way possible. I like to attack it from both sides. Do they have the evidence? Did they do what they're supposed to do? In the meantime, are there some things about you that make it to where our outcome should be different than what's normal? And we kind of specialize in telling those stories and being there for our folks. I try to treat everybody as if it's my uncle or my auntie being in trouble, because that's what I would want.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think kind of to circle back to what you said about the beginning about lawyers often going to the big firms, it never interested me, because their story's not the one I'm trying to tell, and ultimately I have relied on myself and I've put myself in these situations and we've excelled. I'm not perfect. I'm way younger than a lot of the people that are doing this, but what we lack in age, we make up for in experience and not being afraid to push the other side and stand up for what is right, and we've made our bed betting on ourselves, and we continue to do that. And I think that what we provide is unique. You're not getting the standard formula of how are you supposed to defend this case. When I was in college, I had to drop out of Alabama for a little while, and I sold vacuum cleaners door to door. I'm not afraid to go up on a porch and knock a door.
Yeah.
Right.
Do what it takes.
Like, you got to do what you got to do to get to the end. And we have made some differences in cases that are significant. I can't get into anything that's, an active litigation, but there are cases that our work and effort and investigation have made the difference between somebody doing 10 years in jail and potentially getting out not guilty.
I would imagine that some of the people from those big law firms not only don't have your experience in the courtroom, probably are encouraged not to get a case all the way to the courtroom, because how do we settle out? Because, if you go in, there's a risk of losing. Right? And you don't want that. You ain't putting that on the billboard.
Right.
Hey, we lost whatever the percentage of time is. You don't ever want to see that. But being able to be brave enough and have the experience to back up that bravery to actually take a case to court versus trying to settle it outside of court.
Well, and I think that, win or loss, when you go in and do a great job for somebody and they see you fighting tooth and nail and chewing ankles to do anything you can to win, to overturning every stone to make sure that everything is put on the table, when the jury makes the decision, I can't make that choice. I don't get to make that call.
You just put the best case forward.
We let the chips fall where they may. And I find that, again, win or loss, people respect and appreciate again, you willing to put the chips on the table? And if it's their call and it goes the wrong way, they're generally still pretty happy with the effort because we let them make the choice.
The Freedom Lawyers, you can find them, freedomlawyers.com, talking to Thomas Flugum, a defense attorney that was born and raised in Metro Atlanta and doing incredible work for his clients. Daniel, and of course Daniel Madelon, the reason we do this show, Second Chance Bail Bonds. How do you know Thomas? How did that connection come around? What was it that drew you to him, and how have y'all been working together?
Well, Thomas has a great story, and he's a great lawyer, and my story is a little bit crazy too. So I think that's probably naturally how we have come together.
It's just very magnetic.
Very magnetic, right? But we've been doing business for several years now. And Thomas represents us on a lot of our bond forfeiture in that arena, and that can go in different ways too. It's not specifically just that, but in that arena, he represents us on all of our cases.
And I think it was a golf tournament.
Yeah,
because you guys do the great work sponsoring all the golf tournaments around. And I had just left workers' compensation and quit at the prosecutor's office. And a mutual friend of ours I asked to play in a golf tournament. Jesse and his brother Ryan's a pretty good golfer, but Jesse's about scratch. So I think we did the golf tournament and we ended up winning, and we're kind of fast friends from there. But we just got along really well before we even ever started kind of doing work.
Right.
And and all three of us in the line of work that we're in, everything is relationship based.
Right.
Everything is relationship based. And I've even talked about that to my son who's in college now, is you never burn a bridge. Even if you don't like the way things turned out, you shake a hand. Hey, didn't work out this time.
Yeah.
Appreciate the opportunity. Whatever the situation is. I mean, it's making it up. There is nothing worse than when you've seen someone burn a bridge, and I try to never do it. When you see someone burn a bridge, and all of a sudden, it's only a few months or a few years, or maybe it's 5 years, maybe it's 10 years. Somewhere down the road, it seems that you always come back around.
Right.
And if you burn that bridge, man, things don't turn out nearly as well as if you would have left on good terms. And that seems like common sense to say, but how many people actually follow through with that? How many people light that bridge right on fire?
Tough.
And in that moment, you're talking trash. It's like a football game, man. You're talking trash, and man, after you get done, you're like, I may have taken just a little too far. But in the line of work that we're all in, everything is relationship based. And Daniel, I know your relationship with Thomas and the municipalities that you work with around Metro Atlanta all started based on good relationships, and they continue because of that.
Yeah, and that's a lot of what I focus on in my day-to-day is building relationships and maintaining relationships.
It has to be. I mean, Thomas, that's the only way that anything gets done. Maybe on a golf course,
right?
Going back to the golf tournament where y'all met, how much business in Metro Atlanta gets done on a golf course?
Yeah.
I mean, a boatload. I bet upwards of 50, 60,
Yeah.
70% of the business that gets done in Atlanta comes on a golf course because so many people are out there, whether it's a tournament or whether it's playing for leisure, man. You invite a friend, maybe a new acquaintance, maybe somebody that you have something in common with, going to work with, can work with. And instead of lunch, you're like, hey, let's go hit some balls,
right?
And that's the way it goes. So when was this golf tournament that you guys met? How long ago?
It's been 6 or 7 years now, I think. But, Tug, to kind of circle back to what you just said, like, I think, I come again from a sports background. There is something valuable about having to line up across the way and shake hands with the guy who just kicked your butt.
Yeah. That's exactly right.
It's a humble pie, and it's something that everybody who's grown up in this area or played sports has had to do. And so I think that when you're doing that, you realize kind of sometimes it's the respect of the battle, and you have a mutual respect for an opponent, even if you're on the other side. Because to your point, I might be on the other side next time. I think that the people who get into it and take it personally are thinking about it in the wrong way, because at the end of the day, all of our goal is to make sure that this is a resolution that everybody can live with. The people who need to learn the lesson, but at the same time, not all mistakes deserve to be paid for the rest of your life.
Second chances. A lot of times I think people are reluctant to give second chances, whether it is in business, whether it is in a court of law. Maybe it's a kid that's got himself in trouble early on and they never get a second chance later. Or maybe the goodness of life is actually it does show up, and somebody does give it. You can see it in sports all the time. Kids that have made some solid mistakes and they overcome them. What is it about second chances for you, and how did that become part of who you are, the fabric of who you are?
Again, I think, like I said kind of earlier in the interview, for me, I have been on the other side of the tracks. I have been in the room when people are doing things and seen things that they may not should be doing. And, I had an opportunity to go that route. And I remember it like yesterday, and my friends will tell you, there was a certain point where I applied to law school. I decided this is what I was going to do, and basically didn't speak to any of my friends for 2 years, even though I was right downtown. But it's because I knew I needed to do that to kind of become
you had
who
to
I
separate
needed to
yourself
be.
a little bit.
Right. You gotta kind of go off to battle and go off to war to come back and be the warrior you're supposed to be. And so, in the same way that these guys go to college, you got to go away from mama for a little while and learn what it takes to kind of be a man and rely on yourself and prove it. And when you do, you come out so much richer on the back end because you develop that self-confidence in no matter what happens, when the chips hit the table and when everything seems like it's going against me, I believe in myself to come through.
I would say, and y'all let me know what you think, I would say you learn so much more when you fail.
100%.
You learn so much more when you stub your toe. You learn so much more with eating that humble pie than you ever will when things 100%. Are handed to you, when things are easy. I've said this for many years, and some people kind of look at me like they've heard a dog whistle. You know how a dog, they hear a sound and they kind of tilt their heads sideways. I've said, though they're very different, there is a real commonality between people that grow up with everything and have everything and those who are at the very bottom that almost have nothing. And let me explain why. When you have everything, there's nothing to want for.
Right.
And that creates its own conundrum because we're, as humans, like we strive to do something, to earn something, to get something. If you have everything, you still have that desire.
Right.
And it usually turns into something that is not good. Maybe it's drugs. Maybe it's something far worse. When you grow up in poverty, you have nothing, and you'll do anything to get something. Those, though they're inverted a little bit, that's my belief that they're very similar at the exact same time.
Resentment.
Absolutely.
All of those types of things. But, that's also the challenge, Tuck, is my parents did everything they could. We were completely middle class. But I went to school with kids who had more than me, and I'm constantly looking over my ship. How come that dude has X, Y, and Z? I'm just as smart. I'm just as talented.
It's easy.
But at the same time, you're pushed to do things in a way that they weren't pushed to do them, But that's also the challenge, like the next generation we were talking about off the air. I got a 2-year-old and 4-year-old. How do I simulate the struggle to teach them those lessons?
Because they're growing up differently
without
than you did.
really being able,
exactly right.
You don't want them to have to say, I don't want them in the rooms that I was in. Right? So how do you simulate that struggle to make them build their own self-reliance?
That's the $1 million question right there. That is
tough.
the $1 million question. And I bet you've seen some bonds set at that amount because people ran through that same exact thing.
Oh, yeah,
same exact thing.
Yeah, no, bad, poor choices. And but especially with the kids. I mean, I went through, obviously, my life story is pretty crazy. But, yeah, I mean, I mean, if you want to know how to screw up your life, I can give you the blueprint.
You've documented it on your website.
That's right.
I don't know that people know that. What is? Give the website real quick in case they're interested because it is a fascinating story.
Yeah, atlbail.com.
atlbail.com. Go up there and read Daniel's story and understand and realize what overcoming looks like and turning the ship around. And sometimes I was in the Navy, man. Turning an aircraft carrier around takes a long time. That's a big old vessel to get going in the other direction with some momentum. Life is very similar to that. Sometimes it takes a long time to realize we need to go the other direction, and then letting go of all those exterior things that influence us to do some of the things you're talking about, Thomas, that you saw. And then when you do realize that, how quickly are you able to get away from it? How quickly are you able to get momentum going in the right direction?
Sometimes it takes a while, and sometimes you got to pay the piper for some of those decisions to get it turned around, But that's also what I've seen is that even the people at the very bottom who, me even coming into the case, we're in trouble. How are we going to navigate through this? Oftentimes when we dig into it and we get through it on the back end, my goal is that everybody is a better person. We don't end up how you got me here. That is the point. That's what the justice system's designed to do.
I tell you, you summarize it so well. Talking to Thomas Flugum, he is a defense attorney in town. You can hit his website, freedomlawyers.com. Criminal defense, it is freedomlawyers.com. I know you believe in second chances. We've discussed that. We've laid that all out. And your company's called a second chance bail bond. Daniel, I know you believe in second chances, obviously.
I do.
Community initiatives that relate to those second chances. How have you helped your clients through some of that stuff? And what are some of the things that y'all have done at Freedom Lawyers?
We try to make ourselves available to every single client for every single question. So my folks all have my cell phone number, every one of my associates' cell phone numbers. We're lucky, honestly, to have Second Chance, though, because they keep us involved with being involved in community outreach, really in every metro Atlantic County. This guy sponsors more stuff.
Oh, I'm telling you. I've seen, I had no idea that there was that much going on. To find that much stuff to sponsor. And I guess it makes sense that it is. I mean, think about all the things that happen in a city of about, 7 million in Metro Atlanta nowadays, whatever the number is. Of course, I mean, from like you talked about, coaching,
right,
umpiring, refereeing, whatever. And Daniel, I don't know if you've been doing that, but I know you sponsored an awful lot of it.
Yeah, from a lot of even down to the kids, the high schools. We're on, I think, a basketball gym floor in Cobb County.
No, are you serious?
Yeah. Which I was shocked that they even allowed it, but they reached out. So it's just so much stuff that we do. But it's community is part of our core values of who we are at Second Chance, and that's honestly the most fun part about the business, is that
developing those relationships, seeing
people
in
the community.
Well, but seeing people do good because of something. Look, without your name on the floor at wherever it is you're talking about, on the basketball floor, there was a reason they needed your name on that floor. There was some expense that the school or the neighborhood community, the recreation department, whatever it is, there was a need there that you met because of the company that you run. They needed you. It's not like you went hey, I want to put my name on a basketball court. I'm sure you weren't raising your hand for that.
It was definitely not on the short list.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's not on the bingo card. Somebody reached out and was like, hey, we need this help, and this is what we're willing to do if you'll help us. Thomas, you're in the same boat, man. I'm sure there's all kinds of things, all kinds of calls that come in where people were like, hey, this is what I need help with. And you're like, man, that wasn't what I was expecting today.
Well, and it's you see them where they are or what they're going through. And that is the cool thing for what I do. I do everything from DUI to murder and everything in between. I love a good arson case.
Okay. That was not on my bingo card.
When the fire is bad enough, everything is burned down. So, those are things. I do really like that about the job. When I was a prosecutor, I'd get to work, it was dark outside. I would leave work, it was dark outside. I'd get there, there'd be 150 cases stacked up. I'd leave, there'd be 150 more that I didn't see that day. What I do now is I'm with my clients. We're working through this together. Again, going and knocking on the doors, going and taking the photos. I like to see it through my own eyes because that helps me describe and tell the story to somebody else. It's the difference between being there and seeing it on TV.
That's impressive, man. But that drive, and I see the passion that you have. I mean, when you speak about it, same way with you, Dad. When you talk about these things, you can tell that you're compelled. There's a bigger reason behind what you're doing. Of course, we all want to make a living. I mean, that goes without saying. But when you're passionate about what you make a living doing, that's a new dynamic. That's a level of service that you might not get in those big law firms that we talked about a little bit ago. The ones that have the big billboards and all that. And maybe 100%. You have billboards, but when they talk about how it's the biggest and the best and the greatest, it might not always be that way. It may be the small guy.
They bill the hour. They bill by the hour. Like we try and I do every case as a flat rate. So exactly how much you're in for no matter how long this takes. We're not the cheapest, but it's because I know all the extra effort and time and energy that we're going to be putting into these cases goes toward the win. For better or for worse, it's a wins and losses business.
Exactly right. And sometimes you get what you pay for.
Right.
You're 100% right. When we continue on Back Your Blue with Daniel Madelon of A Second Chance Bail Bonds and Thomas Flugum. He's a defense attorney here in town. My name is Tug Cowart. We'll talk about technology and how that helps on the defense side of the law and how it helps with A Second Chance Bail Bonds. Next on Extra 106.3.
Extra 106.3 and A Second Chance Bail Bonds are here to back your blue. Now back to the show on Atlanta's only conservative news and talk station, Extra 106.3.
Welcome back to Back Your Blue with Daniel Madelon of A Second Chance Bail Bonds. My name is Tug Cowart. Our guest this morning, Thomas Flugum. He is a defensive attorney here in town. He grew up here. He's got his roots here. He left and came back here. It means that much to him. But he understands, I bet, Thomas, that you grew up with a lot of people that weren't from here because so have we all. It's a wonderful place to live. I understand why, whether it's climate, opportunity, education, there's so many reasons to come to Atlanta, Georgia, metro Atlanta. So that's why people do it.
Yeah.
And seeing that gives you a unique perspective on the people that grew up here, what's important to them, and the people that have moved here, and maybe what's important to them and how they feel because they did come from somewhere else. Maybe they don't understand exactly the mentality or an understanding of historical facts that create the way they believe and why they believe what they're doing. Yeah, I can see that being something that would be challenging because I grew up here. I only know that perspective, So for someone that's coming here and they're like, how come they say buggy? It's a grocery store. Why do they say buggy? That sounds dumb.
But if you want an attorney, right, you want somebody who you feel like is connected to the people who are making the decisions and is familiar. You don't, you're not tying yourself to an unfamiliar vessel coming through. Nobody wants the ship captain who it's his maiden voyage. Sometimes you pay for the guy who's done it 100 times over and keeps coming back safely. And kind of going back to your stuff about technology that you were mentioning, what we have developed because of COVID is the ability to have some of these courtrooms meetings on the computer.
Yeah, virtually. Like Zoom or Teams or whatever.
Something that I had never really done or felt comfortable doing until we were forced to do it. But because we're such a transient city, people come for music, people come for sporting events.
Movies.
They get trouble while they're here. Yeah. They move back or their family is from somewhere else. It gives us the ability to still meet those people face to face and gather that comfort, develop that rapport in a way that I don't think we had before.
No, it's impressive. I can only imagine that dealing with as many municipalities as you do, it's probably the same way as Thomas, that you have people coming in and out of town, maybe that don't live here. They spent 24 hours here. They spent 48 hours here. They were in a hotel. They got themselves sideways somehow or other, and the first thing they do is call you. And you have that same grounding in that, you know the area, people that and how people think that are from here, and maybe how they don't or how they think when they're not from here.
Yeah, no, and the technology piece, digitalizing the process, which we were actually doing prior to COVID, and that just kind of expedited it. But talk about what a game changer for people that are not from here or people that have relatives that are co-signing in other states across the country. I mean, so that's how we're able to capitalize on that market, and we lean on technology for that type of stuff.
I can only imagine, man.
And even in the expansion of the ankle monitoring has allowed people to go back home in a scenario where the court may not be comfortable with that, because at least now we know where they are.
Yeah, which I would imagine for law enforcement, especially if there's a pending trial, I can only imagine that they would really, really like to know where people are and what they're doing, and the technology that A Second Chance Bail Bonds has invested in gives them that ability. But then it gives a certain amount of freedom too.
100%.
Right? It seems like a win for both sides. The law enforcement side, the folks who are innocent until proven guilty, that side, because both of those things matter. I know a lot of people get caught up saying police officer, good guy that's accused, bad guy, or vice versa. Police, bad guy, person that's been accused, good guy.
Right.
There's
Well,
it's an odd dynamic these days.
But it also creates structure too, right? So,
which is great for everybody and everything in the world.
Right. There's people that, that come out, and whether it's an app-based program that we're doing through the monitoring, or if it's an ankle bracelet or remote breath, alcohol, whatever the case is, it does, for some people that don't have any resources at all, it gives them some sort of structure to kind of maneuver through their day. So there's positives that come out of it that are more than just the obvious that's in front of you.
From the intoxilizer aspect, me as a criminal defense attorney, if I have somebody who struggled with alcohol and we can show that they haven't had a positive breath alcohol test for the last 8 months because they've had to blow into the breath tube to turn their car on every time, gives me some credence when I go in and say, listen, this person has learned from their lesson and deserves some rehabilitation and some grace and some restorative justice.
A second chance, if you will.
Yeah, a second chance instead of just throwing the book at everybody. So,
yeah, it's fascinating. The world we live in feels very topsy-turvy. It feels very upside down. And it takes people in the field that genuinely care to make heads or tails of it. Obviously, Daniel, your business, y'all care about the people that you work with.
Right.
You genuinely want people to have a second chance. And making heads or tails of a crazy, chaotic situation is what you're there for. And Thomas is the same way, obviously. People's lives have been turned upside down for a decision they make or a decision they've been accused of making, which maybe they didn't ultimately. And it's your job to figure out, okay, which way's up? What's left and right? I know what I've been told. I know what the police report says. But that doesn't necessarily make it there's all kinds of things that happen that don't look the way that they actually are.
People usually come to me and it's the worst day or week of their life. All of the alarm bells are going off. And again, it's kind of my job to calm that and come up with a game plan. And I am always a believer in if we have a plan, we got a way, And outside of that, things change sometimes. We can pivot, we can maneuver. But that's also why it's important not to say too much. When the police are asking you questions or you're getting interviewed, it's generally because you're a suspect or they want some information from you. You're under no obligation under the Constitution to admit or reveal information. I tell people to have kind of a in-your-pocket response. Officer, I respect what you're doing. Thank you for keeping us safe and thank you for your service. I'm not answering any questions and I'm not taking any tests. Why? Why not? What are you hiding? Again, officer, thank you so much for your service.
Stick to the script.
And if I'm watching that video, I'm sitting there thinking, wow, I didn't know you could even say that. And the person wasn't so out of their mind or wasn't so intoxicated or didn't have enough going on to not know what to say, because it's a jury of your peers. The jurors are the ones making the decision as to guilt or innocence at the end of the day. So, that's how I think about it.
I have a feeling there's probably people right now that are listening that had no idea that either.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, really, genuinely had no idea that you could even behave that way.
Right.
Because, let's be honest, when you get pulled over, your natural instinct is to defend yourself, and that's not the place to defend yourself.
It's like again, UGA. Imagine going out there and playing that game and not having watched a lick of film.
Yeah.
They hadn't done any practice.
No preparation.
No scouting.
Yeah.
Most people are in that spot when they get pulled over. No one sits around and thinks, man, how am I going to game plan about this? Because most people don't understand what it takes to win. That's why you got the coach. That's what I'm here for.
That would be Thomas Flugum. If you need Thomas's help, if you need his expert opinion, expert preparation skills, expert advice, then reach out to him at freedomlawyers.com. That's freedomlawyers.com. And Daniel, folks need to get a hold of you occasionally too. Not only for the good that you do in the community, but when they're on their worst day. How do they get a hold of you?
atlbail.com.
atlbail.com, freedomlawyers.com. I tell you, Thomas, it's been a pleasure having you. I hope it won't be the last time we get to see you here on Back Your Blue. And obviously, I'll see you next week.
Lord knows we aren't going anywhere.
That's right. There's plenty to do. We ain't going anywhere. Yeah, you laid down, replanted roots, man.
Right.
Those things run deep. That'll do it for us. Thank you so much for checking out Back Your Blue. My name is Tug Cowart. This is Extra 1063.